Welcome to your Phil Steele Plus tour for week 8. And, guys, I've been a little disappointed. I've been looking for big winners each week on these Phil Steele Plus tour, and we haven't had that big winning week yet. So I'm guaranteeing this week, and here's the guarantee. If for any reason the top 3 plays this week in the FBS don't have a winning week, I will give you a free week of Inside the Press Box, a $20 value, the college version, absolutely free next week. And I'm not even charging you for Phil Steele Plus. That's how much I want to win here. That's how much I want to win on Press Box. I want to win every week. I'll give you an example. Last week we went 2-2 in the FBS. Actually, we were this play away from being 3-1. A big winning week. Here it is. We had West Virginia minus 21.5 against Kansas, 38-10. And here comes the kickoff. And with the kickoff, that is Puka Williams. Puka Williams, by the way, has opted out of Kansas. He did it a week too late. Oh, broken tackle. Oh, okay, push him out on the sideline. You've got the angle. A lot of guys have the angle. Not going to happen. And Kansas gets the cover by a half a point. And instead of 3-1 on the FBS plays, we go 2-2 for a disappointing week. And that has sparked me to have this guaranteed week. Now, for any reason, if we don't have if the 3 plays I give you in college don't have a winning week this week, what you can do is you just go to I'll show you the site, which is our store. And when you go to the home page, well, actually, let's go to the Phil Steele store here. Go to the store. Here's Inside the Press Box, and here's the single issue. Next week, you would go here to the college edition. The single issue is $20, and you would order it, and you would type in the code word Phil Steele Plus, all one word, Phil Steele Plus, and you will get next week's entire Inside the Press Box for free. Next week, there's 50 games. You'll get my computer's forecast on 50 games. You'll get my forecast on 50 games. You get a $20 value absolutely free if we don't have a winning week for you today. But we should have that winning week for you this week in the FBS. Top 3 FBS plays guaranteed this week or next week's Inside the Press Box, $20 value free. Type in the code word Phil Steele Plus. Let's get started with your first game this week. And we're going to take a look at North Carolina State against North Carolina. Now, remember, the purpose of the Phil Steele Plus tour is I know a lot of you guys have signed up for Phil Steele Plus, but you don't use everything on there. I put up on Phil Steele Plus, this is all the information I use for myself. We've been accumulating it for 40 years for a lot of this stuff, but putting it up on the website for about the last 10 years. And I click on this stuff. Every game I look at, I line up the visitor on the left and the home team on the right. And what you do is you go to the team pages. We'll just flip back here. Team pages are located here. If you don't know the conferences, here they are in alphabetical order. We've got the NFL team pages, and we have the FCS team pages, once again, by conference or alphabetically. You click on any one of these. You want to come down to the FCS, for example, and click on North Dakota State. We're going to hit here, and you have got everything on North Dakota State at your fingertips. What they've done this year, here's your stat leaders, what they did last year, stat leaders, individual player stats. It's all on there for every FCS, NFL, FBS team, all at your fingertips with Phil Steele Plus. So, I always like to line up the visitor on the left, which is NC State, and the home team on the right, which is North Carolina. Let's take a look at this matchup this week. North Carolina is off a loss. That's dangerous. And they did beat Virginia Tech by 11, Syracuse by 25 this year. But let's take a look at a couple of notes. Now, one thing that you might not know with Phil Steele Plus is when you come down here, you can click on the opponent right here like this. And when you click on the opponent, you will get the last 23 years matchups at your fingertips. Here's how this works. Out here, it's color-coded green and red. The word win or loss means that the home team won or lost the game. So as you can tell, the visitor has actually won 6 of the last 7 games outright. They're loss. That's a nice trend for the visitor. Look at the color now. The color means covering. You can see here that the visitor has basically covered the majority of the games that they've played. The visitor is 17-5 against the spread. Now, here's the upset column. And this tells you if a series has a lot of upsets. This series has a lot of upsets. Look at all these upsets out here. 13 outright upsets in the series. So underdog, good. Visitor, good. And how about this? NC State's pretty much controlled the series. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins to 4 losses straight up in the series. Now, this is green means you won the game straight up. Red means you lost the game straight up. Over here is whether you won or covered the spread. And this gives you who the favorite and who the dog was. You can look at the yards each year. You can see that, last year North Carolina did put up 620 yards. But prior to that, North Carolina State had won 3 of the previous 3 games. So all that's at your fingertips on every game right here. Just click on the opponent, and the last 23 years matchups will come up at your fingertips. I'll get to the box scores in a minute, but let's take a look a little bit closer at this matchup. And we look at, you can go at the individual player leaders. Now, Devin Leary, the starting quarterback for NC State, is out. So let's look at the individual player leaders. Leary missed the opening game of the season. Bailey Hawkman played and did well. They put up, let's go back here for a second. They put up 45 points against Wake Forest with Bailey Hawkman as a starter. Now, Hawkman struggled at Virginia Tech, and Leary has been the better quarterback. No ifs, ands, or buts. But as you can see here, Hawkman came in and threw a touchdown pass against Duke, and now we'll go back over here. If you click on the box score, and I want to thank collegepressbox.com for providing these to us, this gives you the box score of the game, and I go through each play-by-play every game. I've got the 12 TVs in front of me, but I can't hone in on one game all game long. This allows me to go through every play of every game. Look at that, the play-by-play of every game. And we have this up on philsteele.com for you, courtesy of collegepressbox.com. So you can come down here, go to the third quarter. You see Leary still in the game right here. Leary is still in the game, and then there was a late hit, personal foul, targeting, and the player got ejected, and Leary, unfortunately, went out of the game with that play. Hawkman came in. His first drive, they didn't go anywhere, but Hawkman did lead this drive for a field goal, and then probably missed it. There was a Hawkman touchdown drive in here, too. So, actually, it must have been the third quarter Leary got hurt. Yes, here it was, the Leary penalty right here. And then Hawkman came in and led the touchdown drive. So as you can see, they've done okay with Hawkman at quarterback. And then we take a look at the average game grades. Now, the average game grades, when you look at your screen, these give you not just based on the score of the game, but also the yardage of the game and the opponent you play, which I think is huge. In other words, North Carolina here beat Syracuse by 25. They only beat Virginia Tech by 10, but they had a better average game grade against Virginia Tech because Virginia Tech's a better opponent, and they put up 656 yards against them. So if you look at the average game grade for NC State, it's 97. For North Carolina, it's 105.9. Add in the home field edge. That would be North Carolina by 11. They are laying 15.5 here. So add it all up, series history, average game grade, the visitor in the series. I'm going to take North Carolina State plus 15.5 as your first official FBS play. One of 3 this week. One of your 3 guaranteed plays. North Carolina State plus 15.5 over North Carolina. Something I do want to show you on the homepage. We've been adding a lot of blogs. You come back here and you look at the blogs. Check out the Vegas power ratings. These Vegas power ratings, this is what it actually is in Vegas. We use 3 sources plus my set of power ratings. It's all in there. And as you could tell, you could just look at this, and if you're looking at the future week's games, you could tell who's going to be favored and by how much. And as you can see, Notre Dame's number 3 in the AP poll. Vegas only has them number 10 right now. They haven't been all that impressive. They're actually below in Oklahoma and Texas A&M. That means if Oklahoma played Notre Dame this week, even though Notre Dame's number 3 in the country, Oklahoma would actually be a slight favorite in the game. So that's very interesting to look at, and something you should check out right here in the Vegas Power Ratings. And then you could use the blog archive on philsteele.com. Takes you back. Those free schedule updates are huge, and we will keep updating them as it goes. This is what your book will look like. Generally, this is what your book looks like if you add in 3 conferences. And just click on any of these right here. You could click on the, let's say we're going to click on the SEC, or the Big Ten. Big Ten's playing this week. So click on the Big Ten. There are 2 up on a page. This is the exact size they are in the magazine, so you could cut them out and paste them in the magazine. And there's your 8 games. And we've updated the angles. So even if they weren't scheduled to play and now they're scheduled to play, or like Michigan State, it was scheduled in one place. Now, it was originally scheduled at Michigan State. Now it's scheduled at Michigan. We've updated. Sparty travels to the Big House, second straight season. That wasn't in the magazine, but it's updated now. There's your Ohio State Buckeyes one. They're opening up against Nebraska. Big game at Penn State. Print these off. They're in full color. They're 2 up on a page. Paste them in your magazine. Your magazine will look like this if you paste a couple conferences, and it'll look like that if you paste them all in. And do utilize that. And it's right here under the blogs. And we have been updating a lot of the blogs lately. All right, let's get on to game number 2. And it is my average versus opponent average game of the week. Now, when you go here to FBS info, you can click over here and look at all these things we got here. Now, this is your offense and defense yards per game versus opponent average. And let me explain that. And for my explanation, we use this game. Now, I'm always going to put Texas Tech on the right because they're the home team. Texas Tech this year did have 443 yards above Houston Baptist's opponent average, but that doesn't count because it's an FCS opponent. So against Texas, they put up 55 above, Kansas State 22, and against Iowa State, they were minus 126. And the defense gave Iowa State 135 yards above what they came in averaging. They have ranked, out of Iowa State's 4 opponents, they gave up the most yards. That's what this number 4 means. Kansas State, they gave up the most yards to Kansas State on the year. Texas, the 3rd most, and Houston Baptist, they gave up the most yards this year, 177 yards above. So if you take this number here, they average giving up opponents 159 yards above their season average, and Texas Tech gains 49 yards below what opponents come in averaging. Then you look on this chart here, Texas Tech comes up, they're way down here, number 58. You add the 2 together, minus 69.4 yards per game. I'm going to put West Virginia over here because that's who they're playing this week. If we look at West Virginia, they're up here on the chart. They're way up here at number 5 in the country. How about that? And look, by the way, App State, pretty impressive last night. Prior to last night, they were number 4 in the country, plus 263. That may go up, may go down. We'll have to see what the numbers indicate this morning after we get it updated. But let's take a look at West Virginia. Now, once again, the Eastern Kentucky game isn't even included. They held the Eastern Kentucky. They had 443 yards above what Eastern Kentucky allows. 315 yards, they held them below what they gain. Other than that, Eastern Kentucky's played well. Oklahoma State, plus 118, plus 93. Baylor, plus 17, plus 96. And Kansas, plus 123, 139. They held them to a season low, held them to a season low, second season low, second season low. Had the highest amount of yards against Oklahoma State anybody's gained this year. Highest amount of yards anybody's gained against Baylor this year. Add it all up, they're plus 86, plus 109. They're up here. Number 5, Texas Tech is way down there. So it's going to be my average versus opponent average game of the week. And we are going to take a look, and let's drill into it just a little bit closer. We'll go to the FBS info. We'll go to the team pages. When we do that, we're going to click on West Virginia on the left because they're the visitor, and Texas Tech on the right. Let's put this one to Texas Tech now because they're on the right. And Texas Tech, Bowman has been struggling. They actually replaced him with Columbia, the Utah State transfer. This game against Iowa State, I watched every play of that game. Texas Tech was not 31-15. They got beaten bad in that game. It was, I'm not sure if they, let me see if they scored late in that one. Did Texas Tech? Yeah, here it is. Texas Tech scored late in the game. It was 31-7, and it wasn't even that close. Iowa State blew some opportunities. Probably could have been a lot worse score. They scored late 31-15. So that tells you a little bit about that game. The Kansas State game, I thought they played well, and the Texas game, they played well. But this is a Texas Tech team that, as mentioned, is minus those opponent averages. West Virginia high on them. And if we take a look at the game grades, look at the game grade West Virginia is playing to. Now, keep in mind, it includes yards rushing, yards passing, defensive rush, defensive pass, who you played, and the score of the game as well. Add it all up, they're playing to a 104.2 grade. They're only playing to an 88.5 grade. So even adding a 3-point home edge in there, West Virginia would still be favored by 12.7 points, and they're only a 3-point favorite on the road. And, of course, we know there's not much of a home field edge right now. So my average versus opponent average game of the week, we're going to take West Virginia. We're going to take a -3 at Texas Tech. West Virginia -3 at Texas Tech. Lock it in. That's the second of your 3 guaranteed plays this week. And now let's get to my Phil Steele Plus game of the week. Last week it was South Carolina. And one thing I want to mention to you, show you this real quick. Oh, not that one. Let me get to the one I want to show you. The guarantee I talk about, College Press Box last week. I mentioned that the Phil Steele Plus Tour went 2-2. College Press Box went 4-1. One of the plays was South Carolina. Now, that's the one I used as the Phil Steele Plus game of the week. I pulled one of my inside the press box plays over. South Carolina delivered for us as the Phil Steele Plus Tour game of the week. And I'm going to do that again today. I'm giving you one of my actual inside the press box plays today. It is going to be the Phil Steele Plus game of the week. But press box last week went 4-1. We won with UAB, Texas A&M, Wake Forest. Not sure what the heck happened to Temple. They jumped out to a 10-0 lead, and then they didn't play very well against USF. Only won the game by 2, laying 10.5. But you get a guaranteed winning FBS Saturday. The 3 games I'm about to give you, or all of my college press box plays next week, are yours free. So I do want to bring that up. Now, let's take the Texas-Baylor matchup. And Texas, I'm going to load in here on the right because they're the home team. And Baylor, I'm going to load in here on the left because they're the visitor. And I do this on every game. And to be honest with you, when I'm doing radio shows, I do the same thing. I log them in, one right next to each other. I've got all this information at my fingertips. And I sound pretty smart, don't I? It's Phil Steele Plus. It makes me smart. It'll make you smart. You can get Phil Steele Plus for the rest of the year. I'll look up the price in a minute. Maybe Todd will shout it into me. I think it's $54 right now. It might be. It's $54 right now for the rest of the year. You can have access to this all the way through the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. $54 the rest of the year. All you have to do is go to the Phil Steele Plus store right here. I should have just done that. And you click on Phil Steele Plus. $54. You have access to all my information for the rest of the year through the Super Bowl for $54. Come on. That's ridiculous. And these team pages, let me show you some of these team pages. Here's Texas, for example. Texas, you can go back. There's last year with the individual leaders. You want to see how the player did. How did Sam Ehlinger do against Baylor last year? 22 of 37, 200 yards. Ingram ran for 86. Ehlinger ran for 79. At your fingertips on every game. You want to go back and see how he did against Baylor in 2018? Let's click on it. There it is. Ehlinger only hit 4 of 5, so Buechele was actually your starting quarterback. He's playing for SMU right now against Baylor 2 years ago. This goes on and on. 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. And it's color-coded green and red, which is beautiful. You could tell at a moment, look, they couldn't stop the run in 2015. You could see that at a glance. Red is bad. Green is good. Texas could run the ball in 15. They're Hurd, Foreman, Gray, they ran the ball well, but they couldn't stop the run, and that was a problem in 15 for them. You look at these red numbers here. If you can't stop the run, you're probably going to have a lot of red numbers here. Look at that. Texas ended up losing 7 games that year. So all that's at your fingertips there. You also have this, and this is pretty valuable. You get the last 40-plus years results, all the way back to 1976. Gives you every spread on every game, every record on every game. Here's your straight-up record on every game. Here's your ATS record on every game. Tells you if they were in a bowl game or not. So you could see, what? Texas wasn't in a bowl here. Texas wasn't in a bowl 3 straight years here. Tells you that at a glance. And then, once Vegas started putting numbers on the over-unders in 2013, we started logging them in here. So you've got over-unders at your fingertips since 2013. You also have halftime scores since 2014, which really gives you a good flavor of the game. Look at that. Texas was losing to Kansas 9-7 at the half, came back and won 27-23 as a 22-point favorite. You could tell all that at a glance. Complete statistical leaders. Who was the coach? It was Mac Brown, then it was Charlie Strong, Tom Herman now. And it gives you where they finished in the Big 12. It gives you the stats for the year. All this is at your fingertips on every team. And it's all for just $54 on Phil Steele Plus. But let's take a look at this Texas and Baylor matchup this week. And I'm going to show you my Inside the Press Box write-up for starters. And because that's what we're doing here, I've got it going 41-20. Texas, look at my computer. You get my computer's projection on every game. It's saying Baylor's going to run for 107 yards. Texas for 188. Baylor's going to pass for 161, have a total of 268 yards offense. And Texas is going to throw for 280, have 468 yards offense, and win the game 37-24. Texas is a 9-point favorite. Now, the beautiful thing, I want you to do this if you do get inside the press box normally, or if you get inside the press box this week for the $20. I want you to take the actual box score and compare it at the end of the game, and then circle any game that's within 25 yards rushing, 25 yards passing, or 3 points. Same thing here. 25 yards rushing, 25 yards passing, or 3 points. Put a circle on the page. When you get done, look at all the circles you've got. It's like getting the actual game box score in advance. Now, I don't always agree with my computer, but you can see my computer's forecast. You see my forecast. Then you decide who you're going to go with this week, my computer or me. In this case, we agree. We both like Texas. We both like Texas -9. When we look at this one a little bit closer, Texas isn't playing bad. They only lost to TCU, a very good TCU team, by 2 points. And Oklahoma went 4 overtimes. They could easily have beaten Oklahoma. Change one play in those 4 overtimes. Any one play. Pick it out. You could have had Texas win in overtime against Oklahoma. They'd be 3-1. They'd be ranked right now. Look at the game grade they're playing at. 105.5 on the season. And in fact, when we go back and take a look at this, go back to the homepage, and if we look at the, we're going to look at the average grade here, offensive defense average. Texas is up here. They're at number 7. They're actually playing well above opponent averages right now. Baylor, you got to come all the way down here to find Baylor. Baylor's down here. They're -19.5. Baylor only put up 352 yards on Kansas. That was a season low of anybody against Kansas. That's 133 yards below what Kansas allows. That means Kansas, when they're not playing Baylor, gives up 485 yards per game. Baylor only got 352. Baylor only got 256 against Virginia. They're only getting 304 yards per game. The defense has played decent so far, no doubt about it. They've got 6 sacks. Remember, it's an inexperienced defense. And speaking of experience, you go to the magazine, and the magazine page has got the experience chart on page 29. And when you look at the experience chart, I'll just pull out the Big 12 part. Texas comes in number 34 in the country on the experience chart. Baylor's number 89 this year. And they've got a first-year head coach. And they've only played 2 games. So we've got a lot of things going for us here in Texas. The reason that the line's 9, why is the number 9? Well, everybody thinks Texas is trash right now. They've lost 2 games. Once again, they're 2 plays away from being 4-0. 2 plays. 1 play here against TCU, 1 play here against Oklahoma. They're 4-0. And you look at Texas a completely different way. They might be in the top 5 if you change just 2 plays in their games, because they've done it well statistically. They're outgaining opponents by 95 yards per game. Baylor is -33 yards per game. And the one thing I want to point out about Texas is everybody's throwing them in the trash. They're done, right? You go back to 2018. They lost these 2 games, Oklahoma State and West Virginia. And at that point, they're done. I wonder if they even fell out of the let me see if I have the rankings up here. Go to the last 40 years. I want to look at this 2018. They were ranked 15. They lost. They fell. They were still 15, but then they won, and then when they beat Georgia, number 6 Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, they actually finished number 9 in the country that year. You see this post up here? Number 9 in the country they finished. So they still finish well. They're 2 plays away from being a top 5 team. They're hosting Baylor. The reason they're only laying 9, they've got 2 losses. People only look at final scores. Tom Herman's a horrible favorite. Tom Herman's a horrible favorite, but this is a reasonable spread. He's not laying a lot of big points. And now I want you to turn to page 147 of your magazine. Go ahead. I'll give you a second. 147. All right, now look under the coaches box and look under Tom Herman up at the top. Off a loss. And when you look up there, you can see that he's 15-3 off a loss. Now, he is off a loss now, so let's make it 15-4 because he lost to TCU, lost to Oklahoma. But that's still a pretty good record. The heat's on Texas. I think they're a much better team. They're more experienced. They're playing better. We're going to use our Phil Steele Plus Game of the Week on Texas -9. So there you have it. North Carolina State plus 15.5. West Virginia -3, Texas -9. If we don't have a winning week this week, just go to Phil Steele, the Phil Steele store next week on philsteele.com. Use the code word Phil Steele Plus. All one word, Phil Steele Plus. Type it in. You will get next week's Inside the Press Box. absolutely free. Now, not including the guarantee. And last year we did fantastic. Last 2 years we've done fantastic on FCS games. The reason we're not probably this year, well, first of all, we have a lot of 1-point losses, which is bothering me. But the second thing would be that we normally have like 60 games to choose from, and I'm picking out the best 3. And this year we've got like 3 games to choose from. But we will take a look at one this week. And the one we're going to look at, not including your guarantee, is Western Kentucky. And we'll put them on the right because they're at home, and they're hosting Chattanooga. Now, one thing you want to notice here, West Kentucky's having a poor year. What happened to Gage Walker would be my first question. Gage Walker last year rushed for 1,208 yards, 5 yards a carry. You come up here, look under the individual game stats. Gage is doing nothing this year. Last week he has best game of the year, 38 yards, 111 yards rushing on the season. That's not going to cut it, but maybe he cuts it loose this week. They're taking on Chattanooga. We're going to come down here, and we're going to look up Chattanooga. And here is Chattanooga. Chattanooga hasn't played a game all year. This is their first game of the season. I like that. Look at Chattanooga's rush totals last year. They gave up 205 yards per game, 4.9. You can see they had some pretty bad games defending the run. So I think that when you look at Chattanooga, they're a team playing their first game. Last year, they played at just an average game grade of 62.2. And Western Kentucky has not played well this year, but they need a win. Let's face it. They need a win. And last year, in their opener for Helton, they actually lost to Central Arkansas, then played well down the stretch. Now, last week, here's what, when you use these individual stats, I think you'll enjoy it. Individual stats, you can see that Terrell Pigram was their starting quarterback. They finally benched Pigram. They brought in Kavaris Thomas. Thomas led some drives late against Marshall. And then last week against UAB started. He had 2 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. UAB's a heck of a team at home. I had UAB last week. Thomas actually played a decent game. And Western Kentucky may have played their best game of the year. I would have thought they would have been outgained by more than 108 yards. That's why I picked UAB. They actually played decent in this game. The box is not updated. If you click on the box, you'll see there was a couple of plays. But look at the yards at half. They were only 7 yards down to UAB. So maybe the tide is turning for Western Kentucky. And let's take a look. They've played Louisville, which came in as one of the favorites in the ACC. They played an undefeated Liberty. They did struggle against Middle Tennessee, but Middle Tennessee's had its ups and downs. Marshall, one of the best teams in CUSA. UAB, one of the best teams, maybe the best team in CUSA. These two are probably playing for the CUSA title game. So they've had a tough schedule. Now they're taken way down. They're playing Chattanooga this week. They need a win. They're minus 14. Add it all up. I'm going to take Western Kentucky with a 5-game under their belt edge against Chattanooga. And I think Gage Walker finally gets it rolling this week against a defense that gives up this yards. And if Gage Walker gets it going and Kavaris Thomas is there a quarterback, maybe West Kentucky get this thing turned around. Well, they got BYU next week. It won't last long, but then they can play down the stretch, and maybe they can win out down the stretch and actually have a decent year. So let's take Western Kentucky minus 14. Okay, FCS, by the way, when you look, you can take FCS stats all the way down. You can see at one point, look at this Chattanooga team. They were dynamic on the ground and had good run defense. And you see all the green out here. Look at that run defense back then. Look at the run defense here. And then something happened this past night. Here's 19's run defense. Sort of struggled, and that's where they struggled last year as well. All right, let's take a look. I want to show you the NFL, and we'll head over to the NFL right now. And the game we're looking at is the Jacksonville Jaguars against the LA Chargers. And the LA Chargers come in just 1-4 this year. That's pretty bad. Jacksonville comes in 1-5. So how can you lay 7.5 points? Well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Chargers minus 7.5. A couple things I want to look at. Now, the NFL is updated here. If you click on the team pages and over here and look on the, well, not team pages. If you click on the home page, go to NFL info. Let's take a look at the offensive and defensive YPG versus opponent's average. It's pretty much what I just showed you in the college. Same emphasis. The Chargers, despite their 1-4 record, they're number 9 in the NFL, plus 53 yards per game against their opponent averages. And let's take a look at who they played. Yeah, they played Cincinnati. Okay. Kansas City. Carolina's been playing well. Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, They're number one up here on the average list. They just beat Green Bay. They're playing well, and the Chargers gave them a heck of a game. And New Orleans, and the Saints were on the road, Tampa Bay on the road, Kansas City and Carolina. They are taking on some prime opponents. And look at the scores. They lost to KC by 3. They lost to Carolina by 5. They lost to Tampa Bay by 7. They lost to the Saints by 3. That's 3 close losses for the LA Chargers. And yet, during this span, they're still plus 10 yards per game. I like that. If we scroll down here, you got the Chargers up here. They're taking on Jacksonville. Now, coming into the year, guys, I thought Jacksonville was one of the weakest teams in the NFL. In fact, I'm still kicking myself. Last week, I had 2 plays I was going to put on Phil Steele Plus. Do I use Detroit over Jacksonville using the same philosophy I'm giving to you right now? Or do I use Dallas? And unfortunately, I used Dallas last week, and it was ugly. Ugly. I didn't even watch the second half. But let's go against Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville's right down there at the bottom, as I showed you. I don't know if I showed you there or not, but here they are, right down here at the bottom where you expect. They are minus 87. Now, that means they're probably playing the cream of the crop, right? Are the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the top teams in the NFL? They took on Indianapolis, a good team, Tennessee, a good team, Miami, Cincinnati, Houston, Detroit. Detroit came in with 1 win and beat them by 18 at home. Now they've got to travel to face the Chargers on the road. The Chargers had been a poor home team because the visitors always outnumbered them and had the crowd edge. That's no longer a factor. They're no longer at the negative crowd that they used to get at home. So that's a plus that the Chargers have a small crowd or no crowd for this game. That means they're not outmanned like they've been in the past. So these guys have played weak teams. They are minus 30 offense, minus 58 yards per game defense. They're number 31 in the average game grades. The Chargers come in playing a tough schedule, and yet they've still outgained their opponents by 10 yards. They've been minus 63 yards per game. I like the fact that if you go under here, under individual stats, these guys have been pretty good with Justin Herbert as quarterback. Kansas City. You're playing Kansas City, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans. 4 strong teams. Look what Justin Herbert's doing. He's got a 9-3 ratio. This guy's confident. He's leading the team to points. They're scoring. The defense is playing well. There are a lot of things to like about the Chargers. Underrated Chargers. Jacksonville is who we thought they were. They're a weak team. How'd they beat Indianapolis? Look at the one game they won. They were outgained by 204 yards by Indianapolis. You won the game. And by the way, you can click over here and click on the box score. You got the halftime scores. You can see the Lions led them 17-3 in this game. They have trailed at the half with every game except for Cincinnati so far this year. They even lost to Cincinnati by 8 points. And whereas the Chargers' losses have been by 3, 5, 7, and 3, Jacksonville's losses have been by 18, 8, 16, and 18. So add it all up, I'm going to take the LA Chargers. One thing I want to show you as well. And once again, the purpose of the Phil Steele Plus, and one of the reasons I've got it here, is I want to show you all the things. Click on the opponent, and look at this. Here's the Chargers against Jacksonville. The Chargers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 the last 8 meetings. And look at this. I love this column. All green. That means the Chargers have covered the last 8 against Jacksonville. So 8 in a row against Jacksonville. I love streaks. You know that. Plan a streak. You win many times, you lose only once. Better team at home. Tougher schedule. You got a lot going for it. I'm taking the LA Chargers minus 7.5. All right, let's have that big winning week. It's free. Phil Steele Plus Tour. But it's a guaranteed winning week. So enjoy it. Let's have that big winning week this week, and I'll be back next week. And by the way, aren't you guys glad the Big Ten and the Mountain West are back? Next week, the MAC is back, and eventually the Pac-12 will get it together. I think it's 2 weeks from now they're actually returning, but I love the fact that 127 college teams are playing. NFL is playing, so I'm loving watching football each week. Have yourself a great weekend, and thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus Tour.